So today we are going to talk about the infamous Darwin's theory of evolution and its holes or exceptions and contradictory facts. Let's start with the introduction about Darwin and his theory. Charles Darwin, an English naturalist of the 19th century, made an extensive study of nature for over 20 years. He collected the observations on animal distribution and the relationship between the living and extinct animals and finally found that the present living animals share similarities to some extent not only between them but also with the other species that existed millions of years ago and among which some have become extinct. Darwin had the following ideas regarding the theory of natural selection. Species keep on evolving or changing with time. As the environment changes, the requirements of an organism also change and they adapt to the new environment. This phenomenon of changing over a period of time as per the natural requirements is called adaptation. As per Darwin's theory, only the superior changes are naturally selected and the inferior ones are eliminated. Thus, not all adaptations contribute to progressive evolution. For example, people living in tropical countries have more melanin in their bodies to protect them from the sunlight. Almost all organisms share common ancestry with some organisms. According to Darwin, all organisms had one common ancestor at some point in time and kept on diverging ever since. His evolutionary theories support the convergent theory and divergent theory of evolution with examples. He also studied that the birds of Galapagos Island, Darwin's finches, developed different beaks as per the availability of the food. This proved adaptive radiation. Similarly, he also observed the Australian marsupials, which showed a number of marsupials emerging from an ancestor. According to Charles Darwin, evolution is a very slow and gradual process. He concluded that evolution took place over a very long period of time. As we talk about the time period in evolution, we usually refer to billions of years. The generation of a species from another takes a long period of time. It is a very steady process as the changes and adaptation take a long time to stabilize and give rise to a new species. Natural selection takes place in 4 different ways as follows. 1. Variation. The changes accumulated over a period of time in an organism usually give rise to a new species. 2. Inheritance. It is the passing on of the variations over generations which ultimately leads to speciation. 3. A high rate of growth of population, thus gives rise to more organisms being reproduced by a species than the environment can support. 4. Differential survival and reproduction. The superior variations lead to the survival of a particular organism and the inferior or negative variations lead to extinction. The superior variations are the ones inherited during reproduction. Darwin's evolutionary theory of natural selection gave a more rational explanation of the formation of new species. As per natural selection, various species originated from a single species as a result of adaptation to the changing environment. Natural selection is sometimes summed up as survival of the fittest, because the fittest organisms, those most suited to their environment, are the ones that reproduce most successfully, and are most likely to pass on their traits to the next generation. But if you do focus on the fact that natural selection is a very wide term that can stand true in the weirdest and most absurd situations, isn't it? Now, I am going to point out the exceptions to Darwin's theory of evolution. 1. Paucity of transitional species. Darwin's theory of evolution rarely mentioned the transitional species that links one common ancestor to its descendants or a different species. There was very little geological record to support this theory at that point of time, and this fact is a very big hole in his theory. I would like to add a point of my research that cat and dogs had a common ancestor who was probably a weasel-like animal called Myiasis, which lived about 40 to 50 million years ago, and this fossil was recovered in North America and Europe, and at that time all the continents were true islands, so it's highly unlikely that they swam thousands of miles to live at a different continent, and if they evolved there only from their earlier ancestors like bees, butterflies in Cretaceous period, then what is the probability that 2 different insects of same type grow in different environments and turn out to be same? I said different environments because it was ice age, so the North America was mostly covered in thick ice and some parts of Europe were hotter than North America. Second point, Darwin never said anything about the origin of DNA in different species because we all know that we have closest DNA to a chimpanzee or bonobo, but in Darwin's theory all species came from one common ancestor which originated in sea, but the differences and similarities can never be understood. Third point. Cell structure of different species was always an exception, and we have multicellular as well as single-cell species which cannot be considered possible to be appeared from a single ancestor, and if we consider this possibility, then sponges who do not have a brain can be compared to humans. Fourth point, some animals like crocodiles, goblin sharks, horseshoe crab and many more have not evolved or changed much from millions of years, and these species are thriving since dinosaurs were there on Earth. They were termed as living fossils by Darwin, but natural selection or environment are not a good explanation in case of these species, and if that's the explanation, then explain why did meiosis needed to evolve in different species of cats and dogs. Keep thinking, keep reading, keep exploring. Hope you liked this video and don't forget to like and subscribe.